I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation, the shooting of a Kentucky judge in his chambers by the sheriff. This was not a whodunit, but was and is a why did he do it case. Here's the story. Whitesburg, Kentucky is a small rural community of under 2,000 residents in eastern Kentucky. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, a place where many folks have both personal and professional connections. And that was the situation with the local sheriff, Mickey Stines, and the only judge in town, Kevin Mullins, both with great reputations, known especially for their work in trying to help their community battle the opioid epidemic. On September 19th, the judge and the sheriff had lunch together with some other people. Later that afternoon, the sheriff headed to the judge's chambers. Once he got there, he went into the judge's office for a closed-door private meeting. What happened next, no one in this small town expected. The sheriff fired his gun several times, taking the life of Judge Mullins in his own chambers. But this was not the first crime to occur in Judge Mullins' office. It was also the site of a sextortion scandal where the judge's bailiff was prosecuted for extorting sex from female detainees in exchange for not having to pay for ankle monitoring services. These criminal actions took place in the judge's chambers and bathroom after hours. And they also became the subject of a civil lawsuit naming the sheriff, Mickey Stines, as one of the defendants. So now, with the sheriff charged with first-degree murder for a shooting that was caught on camera, everyone is wondering, how will he defend himself at trial? From the beginning, this has been a very difficult case to try to understand. But we've learned a lot about it because, as we've been showing you, everything is on video. There's no audio, but everything is on video. We're seeing it. So I want to take a moment. I'll warn you, as I always do when we show you the video of the shooting of Judge Mullins, but there was a camera in his office which captured exactly everything that happened. Let's take a look. Like I've been saying, some of the cases and trials we have at Court TV are whodunits. This is not one of them. We just saw who did it. It's all on video. It's as clear as can be. But there is a big question, and it's the first question of our investigation. Let's take a look. It's a simple question. Why? Why? I don't know how simple the answer is, though. I think there are layers to this answer. I think it's complicated, and I think we're going to try to get some sort of an answer to it tonight. Joining us for the entire hour, the defense attorney representing Sheriff Stines, Jeremy Bartley, is with us. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Vinny. It's nice to meet you.
Yep, I just want folks to know and everyone to know there's about a 2-second delay between the questions and answers, but that's okay. We'll work through it. So, how complicated is the answer to that question? Why?
Well, I hate to disappoint you, and I certainly hate to disappoint the viewers, but I don't think that we're going to get that full answer tonight, Vinny. It's extremely complicated. Look, this is not a simple case. This is not a case that is only told by the, 7 to 10 seconds that was shown at the preliminary hearing. The story is one that's told over a several-year period, and most especially and specifically, it is told over the weeks prior to that ultimate moment that you see there on the video.
Well, let me ask you this. Is part of the reason or one of the driving factors the mental health of Sheriff Stines?
Well, we believe so, and one of the things that we've talked about from the beginning is the fact that the first thing he said to the investigators was, I'm concerned that they were going to take or have taken my wife and daughter. We believe that that Mickey believes strongly that his wife and daughter and family were in imminent danger. Now, we believe at the same time that the pressure and anxiety and other factors that I'm not going to discuss tonight, we'll leave that for another day, but we believe that his mental health had been impaired and certainly was accelerated due to this civil deposition.
So when you talk about the danger, and this, I want to clarify this, is this actual danger that his wife and daughter were in, or was it perceived danger in the mind of the sheriff, which may be suffering from some delusional thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, I think there are three options here. Because without a doubt, enough witnesses had interacted with him and heard him convey the fact that he was afraid that others were going to cause him or his family harm. So you basically have three options. One, there was no objective threat, and this is all a complete fabrication within his own mind, that it's completely subjective. The threat is completely within his own mind. And then the second possibility is that there was someone around the corner and he was only perceiving an actual and objective threat. So under the first scenario, then I think we are certainly being prudent in exploring his mental health. And under the second scenario, then there certainly is a, another element of the case. But I think there's a third option. And according to our investigation and what we've seen, I expect it will be that the truth is a combination of both. I believe there was an objective threat to his family, but I believe that his mental health was impaired to a degree that it impacted his ability to perceive immediacy and, the imminent threat of that, the imminent nature of that threat, Vinnie, as well as the magnitude. So I think that certainly the third option, according to what I have seen, is the most likely facts that you'll see at trial.
Now, there's a couple facts that from the beginning here, everyone has talked about, and you mentioned one of them, which was the statement, they're trying to kidnap my wife and my kid. That one you've covered. I want to get to another big factor that a lot of people were talking about being connected to the why. That statement he makes directly afterwards, but it seems from the testimony that we've heard, let's play it. Let's play the testimony from Clayton Stamper here, talking about a phone call that the sheriff made in the judge's chambers just before the shooting.
I was told that Sheriff Stines had tried to call his daughter, and he had tried to call his daughter from the judge's phone also.
Have officers confirmed that the sheriff's daughter's phone number was on Judge Mullins' phone?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
So that number had been called from Judge Mullins' phone,
yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So, Jeremy, am I correct that the sheriff attempts to call his daughter from his own phone, then from the sheriff's phone? And if so, how is that connected to the shooting, again, the why of it? Because it seems if that's happening just before, it has to be connected.
Well, I think if you take a look at what the witnesses in the, specifically one witness that was with Mickey after the launch, but prior to the video that you're showing currently, he was describing his fear that someone was going to cause him or his family harm. And it appeared to this witness at first, he thought that, that Mickey was joking. And then he describes the fact that when he looked him in the eye, he realized that this was a very real threat to Mickey. He believed that this threat was there. And according to the evidence that they discussed at the preliminary hearing, he had attempted to contact his daughter and hadn't been able to get a hold of her. We believed he continued to attempt to get a hold of his daughter and was unsuccessful.
And when they're saying they, is there any indication who the they would be? Like, obviously, the judge would be one of them because he is the target inside the chambers. But any idea who else would be connected? Is it other deputies? Is it other folks from the courthouse?
Well, we believe that there are a number of people who were very interested in the outcome of the civil deposition. We believe there are several people who were concerned about what might be revealed in those depositions. You know, and I really want to take a step back. The very fact that we even have a video within a judge's chambers that's running a live feed, that's completely unheard of. So the fact that we even have video cameras in this chamber signals the past problems that have been ongoing. And so I think that this is not limited to one person, but I believe that there are multiple people that were concerned about the outcome of the deposition. And even more importantly, Vinnie, Mickey believed that there were multiple people that were concerned about what he might say at the deposition.
And what is the status of the evaluations, the mental health evaluations, both for criminal responsibility and for competency?
Yeah, so, you know, we never asked that his competency be reviewed. Of course, competency is always at issue, and that is always subject to, you know, to review. You know, as you know, Vinnie, but for the viewers, the competency would refer to his ability to assist at trial and understand the nature of the proceedings. And at this point, we've informed the court that we don't have any reason to report to the court that we question his competency today. The real issue that we have raised is whether he was criminally responsible. And so generally, we would give the notice to produce that evidence at trial much later in the litigation process. However, in an effort to expedite his examination, which is inevitable, and now the Commonwealth has filed their notice that they intend to seek an examination by their experts, we filed the notice quicker because, and I don't think this is unique to Kentucky, but there's a backlog of cases. They've passed some recent legislation to try to speed up that process, but you know, in general, you're seeing 12 to 18 months for individuals awaiting trial to be examined by the state's experts.
Wow.
So we hope it's a definite problem. It's a real issue that needs to be further addressed. The General Assembly has made some strides in that.
Okay. Let's do this, Jeremy. I hate to cut you off right here, but we've got you locked down for the whole hour, so we do appreciate that. Still to come, what was happening that day just before the shooting?
Come on now. Be fair to me.
We're being good to you, brother. You stick your leg up in there.
Come on now, guys. Please don't do this to me.
10:15, a dog is heard barking.
This is the first case you'll ever hear that you've got to determine the time of death
by a dog's well.
There were no ring cameras. There were no cell phones to ping off locations.
Was that white Bronco there at the time you drove by it?
I didn't see it. There was one critical witness that was never called.
She saw OJ's white Bronco.
Trial and Error. Why did OJ win? A Court TV original series. New episode Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
I can't say it like this.
Slide sideways.
I can't. Come on now. Be fair to me.
We're being good to you, brother. You stick your leg up in there.
Come on now, guys. Please don't do this to me. Please don't do this to me. Please.
You want to scoot on over a little bit to the left?
Come on now.
Try to scoot on over a little bit more. That way we don't hit you. Can you go any bit farther? That's what we'll hit you with the door. Put your knee in there, my friend.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Bates. Hey, Bates. Can we loosen this up a little or give the window down?
I'm sorry.
Can we loosen this up a little? Be fair to me, man.
That's Sheriff Stines after he surrendered himself almost immediately after the shooting. And he's in the back of the cruiser there, and you can hear his voice. We've been talking about that. But I want to focus on before the shooting. I want you to take a look at this video. This is from inside the chambers. And there's the Sheriff Mickey Stines with his hands folded behind his back. You see the judge on the other side of the table in chambers. There's two other gentlemen there. There's other people that from time to time are walking in and out of this open door. But this is the scene of the murder. This is the scene of the murder. But what's going on here, right? Like, this is just a few hours before the shooting. And everybody looks normal here. We can't hear what they're saying, obviously. And all this brings us to the next question in our investigation. What was happening that day before the shooting? Again, we have all this video. You see some video there, but we have the video inside the chambers, which is the scene of the shooting. Still with us, the defense attorney representing Sheriff Stines, Jeremy Bartley. Jeremy, that meeting or that get-together in the chambers before lunch, what was going on there?
Well, the first thing that strikes me again, Vinny, is the fact that we even have a live feed in a judge's chambers. That's the first thing that speaks to me. So in terms of the setting, the next thing that speaks to me is the informality. It's been my experience that even when even if I know a judge on a personal basis, there's a formality to a judge's chambers. There's in general, it's usually reserved for members of the bar. In general, there's some sort of decorum. I'm not saying that there aren't relaxed conversations, but the powwow that we see here is just indicative of the attitude that was reflected in these chambers. And it's the same atmosphere that allowed for the victimization of the females in those chambers. Specifically, we know Ben Fields has pled guilty to illegal sexual action within a judge's chambers. It's just unheard of. In general, you have to have permission from the judge to be in a judge's chambers. And again, there's a manner of decorum. And that's completely missing here. And I think that is what this video speaks to me. I know a lot can be made of, we can all try to interpret, there's no sound, we can try to interpret people's body postures and get into that debate. But to me, the bigger picture is the lack of respect for the seriousness of this chambers.
I understand what you're saying. My father was a judge, so I know exactly what you are speaking of. I want to do this. The lunchtime. So they leave the courthouse and there's a group that seems to be having lunch. I think it's called the Street Side Bar and Grill, which is just down the street. We have some video of folks walking down there. And I noticed that the sheriff is not with the judge on the way down there. But there is some interaction that we heard testimony about where the judge suggested to the sheriff that they have a private meeting and speak about something that they were discussing at lunch, speak about that in a private meeting. How significant is this lunchtime gathering and the discussion that happens at lunchtime relative to what happens later inside the chambers?
I don't think there's anything groundbreaking that took place during the conversations at lunch, and I think the witnesses have, they supported that fact. I will tell you that after they left for lunch, my client went to deliver food. It was something he would commonly do. He went with another gentleman that I referenced earlier to deliver food to some people who were indigent that needed help in that vein. And so there was a period of time after the lunch, but before presumably he arrives back in the video you're showing, that he went to make this food delivery with someone else. And there were some very interesting events that transpired during that delivery that I think will be more relevant than anything that was said at the luncheon.
And what would that be?
Well, I would just say I referenced it earlier, but I believe it is suffice to say that on the delivery there was an incident where our client was asked to deliver to another place that was not the normal place where he did the deliveries for this particular individual. And the witness will testify that at this point he was very concerned that there was an attempt to isolate him and to cause him harm.
This is eye-opening tonight. Jeremy Bartley is going to stay with us. We've got much more to get to. Still to come, was the illegal activity in the judge's chambers related to the shooting? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the shooting death of Kentucky Judge Kevin Mullins, who was killed in his chambers by Sheriff Mickey Stines. The cameras were rolling so we can see everything that happened, but that's not what the case is about. It's all about why it happened. Here's the story. Appalachia is the part of eastern Kentucky where the towns are small and folks look out for each other. There's a lot of respect for law enforcement and the justice system. And folks who work in that system get to know each other very well. Such was the case for the local Sheriff Mickey Stines and his friend District Judge Kevin Mullins. But like any place, sometimes there is controversy. In Letcher County, it was a deputy who got caught sexually assaulting female inmates inside the judge's chambers. That deputy was the bailiff of Judge Kevin Mullins and worked under Sheriff Mickey Stines. That was a couple of years ago. But now everyone's taking another look at that case because something else happened in the judge's chambers. The judge was shot and killed, and Sheriff Mickey Stines is the one being charged with the first-degree murder of a public official. And almost everything that happened that day was caught on camera, both inside and outside the courthouse. And the case is now moving forward towards trial. There's a connection, right? There seems to be some sort of a connection. Like, what are the odds that you'd have two serious incidents like this happening inside a judge's chambers? This is bizarre, absolutely bizarre. Now, let's get to this sextortion scandal, which in and of itself is a huge story. Here's the accuser. She was being interviewed, I believe this is by state police or the Attorney General's office, about what was happening in the chambers. And the man who did it, the deputy, feels he was convicted criminally and pleaded guilty, and he's doing time for that. But I want you to take a listen to what she describes about what was happening and who she says was involved.
But he does have some videotapes of some stuff in the judge's chambers.
What kind of stuff?
Just with girls, sexual and stuff.
What describe? Have you seen the videos?
I've seen one partly, and you know, just them having sex with girls to further be able to get out of jail.
Who was having sex?
Ben and just some higher ups up there.
Who?
The judge and.
You saw the video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What did you see on the video? I mean, you.
I mean, I've seen Judge Walton having sex with a girl.
Who was the girl?
I don't know. Because I don't know a lot of people from over there.
Where was it at?
In his office, in the judge's chambers.
Is that the same place that you were meeting Ben? Yes. Is that how you know it was the judge's chambers?
Yeah.
And this was Judge who?
Mullins.
Now, when she says the name Ben, that's the Deputy Fields, who's been convicted in all of this. Now, the judge was never accused in any of this, but it's his chambers. Brings us to the next question in our investigation, and this may be really the focus of and the reason everything is happening here. Was the illegal activity in the judge's chambers related to the shooting? That can't be a coincidence, can it? I think everyone's been talking about this from the beginning, because how could one not be related to the other? Here with us for the entire hour, the defense attorney representing Sheriff Stines, Jeremy Bartley, is with us. Jeremy, let me ask you an important question. I think this is significant. I think people don't necessarily know the answer to it. Was it just Deputy Fields, or were there others involved in this scandal?
In that particular lawsuit, the only person who was named as an actor, to my understanding, again, I wasn't involved as an attorney in that civil suit, but it's my understanding Ben Fields was the only one named in that particular case. However, there is this audio where other people's names were mentioned and referenced there.
So tell me, and I think we've been kind of talking about this throughout, because it's obviously a significant part of everything that happened here. The illegal activity in the judge's chambers, this sextortion, I call it, right? Extortion for sex. Is it related to the shooting? You said, this has been going on for a couple of years. Well, you go back a couple of years, that's when this whole scandal sort of erupted. So are they related? If so, how, from your perspective?
Well, I think one of the big focal points for this particular case, and we've said this before, is the deposition. The deposition that that Mickey was giving in that particular case was scheduled for Monday, and this happened on a Thursday. So just a few days prior was this deposition. And I think in the week prior to and the week of the deposition, lots of people noticed that Mickey had become more increasingly paranoid, that he became sleepless, had gone nights without sleep. And there was an overwhelming amount of pressure on him. Some internal, but we believe there were external pressures as well, because there were a lot of things that happened within these chambers that during a deposition could be potentially fair game for questions. And not only at that deposition, but if the civil case continued, then in further discovery in that case. And I think there was a lot of interest by those people who populated the judge's chambers, for whatever reason, about what Mickey might say in those depositions. And I think that is certainly going to be a focal point of this trial.
So I'm trying to make sure I understand this correctly, that there's things that Mickey Stines knew about that could be potentially harmful to people's professions, reputations, perhaps their wallet, their freedom, that he knew about things that were taking place in the judge's chambers?
Well, I think that it would be highly unusual for someone who spent a significant amount of time around the courthouse to not observe things that, that should not have occurred. And I think, again, if you listen to Sabrina Atkins' interview, she mentions later on in that interview that she had fear for even given the statement that she was making, and she expressed concern during that interview. So there were a lot of people that were, that were sweating around the collar about what he might say there. And I think this pressure came crashing down on Mickey. And I think that it was an overwhelming amount of pressure. And I think there was, there was an objective threat to him based upon what he might say or not say, or might have already said or not said during the deposition. And I think you compound that with the fact that there is a mental health issue as well. And I think that what you see in the chambers in that video is a result of a combination of those factors.
I want to play another piece of that audio because this part of the audio, a lot of people are wondering if there's any truth to it, and you may be able to answer that. Let's listen.
But you saw the video of the judge.
Yes.
Any other videos that you actually saw?
No. They say that the Sheriff Mickey Stines is involved. I don't know.
Who said that?
Chad. He said he had videos with Mickey. And Mickey used to do the same thing when he was over house arrest.
So, Jeremy, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that because we've heard this. Mickey Stines, was he involved in any of this?
I've not seen any evidence of that. I've not seen anyone that has produced a tape of either my client, and candidly, nor the video that they reference concerning the judge. I've not seen any evidence that supports those allegations against my client.
Let me ask you about this trial when it happens, right? How much of the trial will be about this sextortion scandal versus the shooting of the judge? How do you see that, coming out in court in front of the jury?
Well, at this point, I don't really want to get into some of our trial strategy as far as how that might play out. But I will say that it would be difficult to understand Mickey Stines' his mental status at the time this occurred without understanding the background in the days prior and in the weeks and months prior. I think that they're going to be difficult to be, removed from one another. I think they're intertwined, and I think that, they are relevant to the case at hand.
Is there a chance that this can be worked out in any way without a trial?
Well, ultimately, I think that any attorney worth their salt would explore every option with their client should that be the case. I will say that, that would ultimately be the client's decision. We believe that you advise of the offer, and we believe the rules require that we communicate that. But I will say we feel very strongly in our mental health defense, as well as the evidence, I think, supports our theory of the case, and I believe that we have a strong case to put in front of the jury. But to say would we entertain that? I think certainly you have to. The rules require that you entertain an offer of settlement. But none of those discussions have taken place, and that's within the purview of the prosecutor, and we've not heard anything in that regard.
All right. I know the sheriff's in good hands. You just listen to the carefully chosen words of Jeremy Bartley. He's been doing this a long time. He knows what he's talking about, providing us information tonight that we did not know before. but not crossing the line. Still to come, what was the history between the judge and the sheriff?
The next thing they heard is gunshots.
Grieving widow or mastermind behind a murder.
Monica Cimentelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cimentelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The celebrity stylist murder trial. Weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
The sheriff walked in and asked whoever was in the chambers that he needed to speak with the judge in private, and the doors were closed.
And they couldn't hear any other conversation after that, even that there was conversation?
No, the next thing they heard is gunshots.
It's shocking, everything that has happened here, but the more we're learning about what was happening in Letcher County, Kentucky, becomes even more surprising. And then you take it into the judge's chambers. That's where everything is taking place. I want you to take a look at this. This is Michael Clark, is a pastor who says he has a relationship with both Judge Mullins and Sheriff Stines. I want you to check out this clip from Nosy Wren on YouTube.
Mental illness is real. People go through hard things that we don't know what they're going through. Bottom line, one of my best, closest, dearest friends, Judge Mullins, was killed yesterday, and one of my best, closest friends, Sheriff Mickey Stines, is locked up and charged with murder. The motive and everything will come out, and everyone will eventually know.
He's an important part of this whole story, Michael Clark is, and says he's great friends with the judge, great friends with the sheriff. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. It's about this relationship. What was the history between the judge and sheriff? They have a mutual best friend, seemingly. How close were they? How about their families? I mean, this is a small town, a small community, and these two have really important positions. Still with us, the defense attorney representing Sheriff Stines, Jeremy Bartley. Jeremy, how would you describe the history between Judge Mullins and your client, Sheriff Mickey Stines?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned, Letcher County is a small community, particularly each town. Whitesburg is a small community unto itself. Fleming Neon is a town there where my client was, from. And I grew up in the adjacent county, probably about 7 to 10 minutes from this community. And one of the things I can say is that there is you won't find any better people in terms of people supporting one another, being cordial with one another, and everyone knows everyone. And so, to describe the history between Mickey and the late judge, I do not believe that they were close social friends. I think that Mickey had a really good relationship with the prior judge who was on the bench when he was bailiff, and I believe that there were certain things that the prior judge did that Mickey was more comfortable with than when Judge Mullins took the bench. In terms of their closeness, I'm sure they had mutual friends, and they spoke. They may have been at a social event together, but I'd be surprised to know if Judge Mullins even supported him in his campaign for sheriff. So I don't think they were as close as one might think. But in a small town, everyone knows everyone.
Interesting. That is fascinating, because they're both men with important positions, right? The sheriff, the judge. let me ask you about something else, right? Because you're talking about a mental health defense here. You're not talking about, like, I didn't do it. So there's a concession based on obvious evidence like this video that the sheriff shot and killed the judge. Is there a sense of remorse from Mickey Stines at this point?
Well, part one to your inquiry, we don't expect any real, any Perry Mason or Scooby-Doo moments. Yes, that is our client in the video. So this is not a whodunit. We're talking about the events surrounding it and the understanding why this has occurred. In terms of my client's feelings right now, that could only be gleaned between my conversations between he and us as his counsel, and I certainly am not going to get into that today, Vinnie, but this is a tragedy. Everyone is, everyone hates that this has happened, but as to Mickey himself, I don't want to comment on anything he's feeling or thinking now.
And for obvious reasons, I understand. The folks watching, they watch Court TV, they understand as well. How about his wife and daughter? How are things going there? This had to be, I don't know, they had to be shocked, obviously, by all of this. And they have to continue to, wake up every day and continue to live their lives. How are they doing?
Well, this is difficult. Again, we talked about, living in a small community. You're in the same community with family members from Judge Mullen's family. And, this is a difficult time. It's difficult. Mickey is someone who is extremely involved in his daughter's life. It's difficult for him. He's missing out on these, final years of high school. It's difficult on the family. It's just really difficult to comprehend. It's difficult to understand. And hopefully with some time, a lot of these wounds can be healed, but it is one day you're the elected sheriff and the next day you're no longer home and on the other side of the law. So that's not an adjustment that you make overnight.
Jeremy, we only have about 15 seconds left here. Will you get a fair shake in Letcher County?
Well, we believe that Letcher County is the appropriate venue. We think that, that's a jury of our client's peers. We believe that the same people that elected him to be sheriff should sit on this case.
Jeremy Bartley, appreciate your patience and your time and sharing with us some of the insight into this case. We'll see you again really, really soon. Thanks so much. The insanity defense is rarely successful at trial. It takes an extremely unusual case. Andrea Yates drowning her children, that was an unusual case, and her defense was successful. This case, also extremely unusual, and it will be up to the folks in Letcher County to determine if the sheriff will be successful. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.